Hello, everyone, and welcome to the show. This week, we will talk about the home inspection. Stay with us until the end. You don't want to miss this. Chris, a pre-purchase inspection is a critical step in the home buying process, helping buyers assess the overall condition of a property and identify potential issues before making a commitment. It involves a certified inspector evaluating key structural and functional elements of the home, including the roof, foundation, plumbing, electrical system, and more. This process provides buyers with a detailed report outlining any necessary repairs and maintenance and enabling them to make informed decision. So my first question to you, Chris, is what's the percentage of your buyers in your experience that do a pre-purchase inspection?
I would put it up well over 90%.
Yeah.
And frankly, it should be at least that high, including even on like an apartment condo.
Yeah.
Yeah. Different degrees, different levels of it. It'd be nice to see the ones for apartment condos lower, but there's still factors to be involved in all of that. And this is a big purchase. You should know what you're getting besides just the paint.
Exactly. And the purpose of the pre-purchase inspection is to assess the overall condition of the property to detect visible and hidden issues. Okay. I was a real estate broker, and an inspector will do a visual inspection. It will open the electrical panel, of course. They will look at the plumbing, but he will not undo any plumbing or open a wall, or it's just a visual inspection.
Yeah, and I think that's really important to know, because I don't think a lot of people, well, they get that and they understand it. I don't think that it quite sinks in that they look for, to varying degrees, but they look for basically whatever they can that are indicators of an issue.
Yeah.
So, having ones that have more tools that they use in those indicators, I think is really important, and making sure that you've got those. So having, like a moisture meter,
yeah,
and running it through, certain spots in the house, particularly, but as much as they can throughout the entire house. Moisture meters, heat meters, all these little things that will indicate certain things that perhaps will warrant more investigation down the road. Certain things don't get looked at. I mean, you can get a home inspector that does a sewer scope, in certain neighborhoods, particularly.
With the camera.
Yeah, right. And that's important.
I saw that.
Don't have
we all should do it. The first time I had one of the clients of mine, I realized we all should do it, because it might be a big problem, but nobody does. Nobody goes with the camera in the sewers.
Yeah. And well, in certain areas, the realtors are a little bit more likely to recommend it based on it being common problems, the types that were used by the cities in those years. I think part of the problem then becomes, though, nobody wants to pay it. Well, this other home inspector will do it for $200 less. Well, that could be a $40,000 hit for you, though, or 40,000 might be a little hefty. $15,000, $20,000 hit for you, though, if that if that pipe needs to be fixed and it's on your property before it hits the city property, that could be yours as well. Now, having said that, more expensive isn't always better than less expensive. Longer inspection isn't always better than lower inspections. I was recently at one, client of mine was the seller, and I'm still fuming at this guy. He was there for 7.5 hours.
7.5 hours.
7.5 hours.
For what? For a stadium?
Yeah. Townhouse for that matter too. I mean, they didn't even do the outside. Yeah, and he missed stuff that was like obvious. That I got calls as the selling agent. I got calls from buyers later, looking for some explanations on some stuff. I just happen to be very familiar with the complex and the property there. But longer isn't always better. And sometimes the inspection is more about the inspector's ego than about actually doing the job for the client. Ultimately, the clients are looking to buy a property. They just want to know what they're buying and want to make sure that they're buying smartly. So yeah, getting an inspector with too big of an ego isn't necessarily a good thing either. But I'd say the number one thing is, look at the reviews and check out what they've got for additional tools. Do they do heat? Do they do moisture?
Yeah.
Sewer scope, I would love to see as kind of a bit more of a standard.
Yeah, standard. Yeah.
Well,
And also density meter. For the studs or the insulation between the walls, they have a tool like that, like density something.
yeah,
That
I mean,
also should be for insulation, especially in Canada, like a standard.
yeah. Well, and while we're on that subject too, like with the insulation, new homes, brand new homes, as well as older resale homes.
Yeah.
The number of times where I've seen a home that was put in without insulation in either a small spot or a very large spot is pretty crazy. Shit, I'll even tell you here we didn't have it in our garage, which we didn't know until I went in climbing in there to run some security cameras. Hey, why is it so easy for me to get around in here? Oh my God, they didn't put the insulation in. Yeah, it really is. Brand new homes as well. If it's brand new, I would say particularly at the 1 year mark, just before the 1 year mark. So you know what's going on there. But yeah, the tools are really big, important part to it. Know what you're buying to at least a due diligent degree. They're not the end all be all. They can't see through walls, but they have indicators that will help them with this stuff. And just the sheer number of properties that an experienced home inspector has done will give him indicators that, this may be an indication of this. And their suggestion should almost be, you should get this checked further or ask about this from the homeowners.
Yeah. Yeah. And the importance of the home inspection is to help buyers make informed decisions and understand the property's maintenance and repair needs. We understand what it has to be repaired or what is broken, but there's also an important thing about the maintenance. When the inspector does the inspection, good inspectors will talk about what the person can do about it, the repairs, but also what to do to maintain the house in a good condition. Do you find that it's important as well?
Do you know one of my favorite things that an inspector does? No. They familiarize you with your new home to be.
Yes, that's exactly the point that I want to make.
Yeah, I'll bet you most homeowners don't know their home as well as the inspector does.
Of course.
Just going through that and can then pass on to because we just don't look at that sort of stuff in our house. How much time do you actually spend going through every inch of a furnace room, or a mechanical room? Like that just doesn't really happen, right? So yeah, they can be invaluable for that, and they can let you know of a whole bunch of things that you will need to do on a regular basis for maintenance. Your HRV system has filters. This is how you get into it, and they'll just run through this stuff pretty quickly with you, typically on a regular basis. And good ones will also put tags everywhere as well, just to kind of mark off stuff, so it's easier for you to find it down the road. But yeah, really good point that they can help you with that maintenance portion. And then a chunk of them after that inspection, they'll send you out a monthly report on your home maintenance checklist as well, which are really good things to follow through. Your house will do better. It'll be cheaper for you. Better all around if you're actually following those maintenance recommendations.
Very good point. And the tags, it's a very good point to remember. Yeah. And the inspection costs, it's generally 600 to 850. But depends on condo or whatever, private area or common areas,
Yeah, different for different areas throughout as well. If they're going out of town, if they're doing acreage, rural property where they've got to do other additional inspections, outbuildings, that sort of stuff, or you're getting in additional inspectors for, water testing and septic and all that sort of stuff, which may be done by the same inspector. Some of those rural areas, they specialize in doing kind of the full gamut. But here in the city, typical sized home, you're probably looking at about $650, and one of the more reputable companies, you'll get a good job for that, and they will bring in the vast majority of those tools as well.
Nice. And in Quebec, you need to be a member of AIBQ. It's an organization. It's not you're not obliged, but as a broker, you have to refer. You are obliged by law to refer an inspector, which is recognized by the AIBQ. You understand?
Right.
So if
Right.
you buy a loan, whatever, but if you buy it to a broker, the brokers will tell you those are the 4 inspectors that I usually do business with. They're all members AIBQ. They are good. Call them or call your own. So how do you find a qualified inspector here in Alberta? Is it a website with inspectors on it, or just referrals from your broker?
Yeah, so they do have to be registered inspectors here too. With I can't remember the name of the organization, to be perfectly honest. I actually know the president of it, or the past president of it. He was actually the one that got me into this business to begin with, to really be frank. And yet I can't remember what organization he's with, but yes, there is a professional organization here for home inspectors as well in Alberta, and you definitely want to be going with that. You don't have to, as a rule, with the way the contracts are written, basically everything's negotiable. You don't have to do an inspection. You can put an inspection clause in there and not have it done.
Yeah.
No problem. You just can't not waive on something that, you said you were going to do, and then not waive on not having done that. But just because you have a home inspection in there, if you decide not to, for whatever reason, you wouldn't have to either. But in order for it to count as an inspection, and even when it doesn't, still highly recommended. I've seen a lot of people just saying, oh, my dad, he's a builder, or he's a tiler, just whatever. And so they'll pull in these people that they know, and they don't go through this stuff to anywhere near the same degree as an inspector would. Get an inspector, do it, suck it up. It's part of the cost of doing business when you're doing a purchase, really, at the end of the day. And it is well worth the money. And hopefully you spend a lot of money on them saying, yeah, look, place looks great. It's one of those things where you actually want to pay to find out very little.
Exactly.
Yeah. But regardless, I have never seen an inspection done by a non-inspector that holds anywhere near the same water as even the lowest grade inspector that we have. It just doesn't happen.
Of course.
Yeah.
So I Googled this. I got Alberta Professional Home Inspector Society. I got International Association of Certified Home Inspectors, and Government of Alberta Home Inspector Service. So those are the websites for people if you want to check it out.
APHIS. Yeah. Nope. Sorry. There it goes. Yeah.
That's the one.
ACHI. That's the
ACHI.
Yeah. Those are the boys.
Okay. So it's International Association of Certified Home Inspectors, Alberta. Okay. It's like a world thing, and they got the Alberta chapter. I understand.
Right. Yeah.
So this is the pre-purchase inspection. What should you know? So we talked about the inspection being a visual assessment of the property. We talked about if it's not mandatory. And right now, I would like to talk about the what gets inspected. So usually will be the exterior elements like roof, foundation, windows. Then you got plumbing, electrical system, obviously insulation with the density meter, and all that is done using a detailed checklist. Do you think there's other things that get inspected, or that's most of the inspection?
Well, and most of the inspectors that I've worked with, they've got their full checklist. They've also got they'll run their hands along the entire wall, basically everywhere they go. Like, they'll just be looking on a continual basis for any little things that might be worth looking a little bit further into and worth checking out. But and we've seen different degrees of this come in with different markets as well. First thing, number one, is major systems. Furnaces, hot water tanks, basement foundations. Where you might get leaks, that sort of stuff. Things that are big, costly to replace, and quite often things that have a limited lifespan. Furnace will only last you so long. It's just, they don't last forever, right? So, and it's a larger, more expensive thing. And it also could be a costly thing if it's running, maybe working perfectly fine, but it's extremely inefficient. So it's going to cost you higher bills every single month than you necessarily expected. There's also the common things. Basement foundation leaks, very, very common one. You go up into the attic and those shingles are worn, or they've got popping nails, and we see, water penetration coming through that's leaking down into, once again, more common things. And some stuff is just not really common, but could be really costly. And knowing what those things are to look out for. So they got the big major things, and then they'll typically pull it into, the smallest and tiniest of things, just so that kind of what's up with that house. And I think part of that is really important to address here as well. Buyers have different reasons that they look at those home inspections for. Many feel that it is a negotiation tool. We're going to work them down on price, work them down on price, work them down on price. If that's how you're approaching it, I guess that's fine. But most people wouldn't really agree that should be the purpose of the inspection. It should be to look for, are you going to buy the property or not?
Yes.
Like it's a lemon or it's an apple. It's an apple. Yeah. So, but some do use it as that. And some will just kind of divvy it up. Some stuff, I want to see that repaired before I'm making the purchase, or at least know that I've got a big, an expense that I've got to address down the road. And then as far as those repairs goes, who's handling it? First, is it going to be the buyer? Is it going to be the seller? And when? And is it going to be every tiny little thing? Or is it going to be just some stuff that's kind of larger or more costly? Because if you can work it in now, you can work it into the price. Heck, for that matter, you could even negotiate that you're increasing the price, but the seller's got to handle something. You guys handle it, but the price is increased. Because then they can work it into the mortgage.
It's true.
Yeah. Or it gets handled now, and that's not really all that typical, or it gets handled now and it's at the seller's expense. And then there's something that we in the industry call a holdback that we work into it. They're going to do the repairs, and we're going to hold back a certain amount of funds to make sure that it actually is done. And not to get into this because it could be a long one. It's probably a episode in and of itself.
A podcast, exactly. Yeah.
Holdbacks are not necessarily simple, although they sound like it may be. What triggers it? What's the caliber that it's done to? Who decides if that caliber was hit? Is it to the buyer's satisfaction, which is a whole other ball of wax? Is it based on a receipt? Lenders have different views of that as well. So you may be stepping into a different ball of wax with that being done as a repair on a holdback as well, because the lender may not agree that that's necessarily in the best interest. So a lot to think about, a lot to talk to your realtor about with these as well. We'll have to do an episode on holdbacks one of these days, because there's a lot to it that'll tie into this. But ultimately you've got the information now. What are you going to do with that information? And what do you reasonably expect to see? And what does the seller, reasonably expect that they're willing to see with that as well, because everything becomes a negotiation.
Yeah. And all that starts with the inspection report. So in order to negotiate either dropping the price or doing the renovations, of seller doing the renovations or seller dropping the price, you need to have an inspection report. In Quebec, they all give out inspection reports. There are some that offer to let's say you can pay $200 less and don't give out the report. They don't do it. Okay, you can do it or you cannot. The thing is, I watched the court cases, and if you don't get the report and something is wrong, then it will most likely go against you if you go in front of a court of law.
Courts like to see everything written.
Exactly. So if you don't have an inspection report, they would say you didn't do your job. And also, for the report to be valid as a legal piece, you have to wait to get it, to read it, and then to accept to continue the transaction.
Mhm.
That's one thing that I learned. So you can like do the inspection on Saturday, let's say, at 2:00, and then at 4:00 when the inspection is done, you can say, okay, I'll sign with the promise to purchase is it's good, so we'll continue. You have to wait to get the report, and then you accept to continue the transaction. Is that what you do in Alberta as well? You
So,
want to talk about a little bit about the inspection report?
yeah, fair enough. So you wouldn't have to. Well, you wouldn't actually have to have it even done, period, in order to fulfill the contract and go firm with that. But you would have to before you could non-waive, say,
Yeah.
we're not completing on this contract
Yeah.
based on this home inspection.
Yeah.
If you didn't have it done, yeah, what are you not waiving on? And that would include even just kind of walking in and finding, oh my gosh, I didn't notice that is missing blah blah blah, and so that whole furnace is going to have to be replaced. I just noticed that myself. In order to non-waive on the home inspection, you still have to have that home inspection done. And actually, sorry, then that kind of triggers off a couple of other points too, that just while we're chatting about it. If something's found in the home inspection, that doesn't necessarily mean that it is now known to everybody, and so it's not part of the contract. Just as an example, the home inspection finds that the oven doesn't work.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so typical, and it vary a little bit from area to area, but here in Alberta anyway, our offer to purchase states that appliances will be in normal working order.
Mm-hmm.
So if the offer to purchase and the contract states that these are in normal working order, and then after this is kind of filled out, you find out that the stove is not working through the home inspection, unless something's been written into the contract that it is understood by both parties that the stove is in as is, where is condition, is not working, you've actually still got something that states that will be working. So, I think it's kind of important to note all the different aspects of how this affects or doesn't affect. Just because something is known doesn't mean it's now negated from the contract as well. So all of that kind of has to be taken into account. And the seller may not know all of the things that typically doesn't, that the home inspector will have found out. And if they do find out something and it's large, a material latent defect, large, costly, not real apparent, such as like a leak in a foundation wall, that they would then actually have to disclose that to any future buyers that come through.
Yeah. Exactly. And that's a legal consideration. So I have two legal considerations to bring forward. The first one, you said it. You just said it. So that's the first one. And the second one is that pre-purchase inspections do not replace the legal warranty. Okay.
Correct.
You understand? That's very important. I know people should know, but I had clients that they thought because they do an inspection, they got a warranty with it or something like that. If something breaks, the insurance will repair it of their insurance or the insurance of the inspector, and it's not. Okay.
Yeah. No.
So that's two legal consideration, very important. And to finish the subject, so the winter inspections, so snow may limit visibility, just or whatever, floods with weather elements can impact the visibility of the inspection.
Well, and along the same lines too, having something done in summer means those heat meters don't necessarily work all that well if you're room temperature inside and outside, right? So some things are actually a little bit better to have done in winter, but and along that same lines then with the tools, having an inspector with a drone. Very few inspectors will go on the roof anymore. That used to be kind of a standard thing, but having one with a drone, they can see a little bit more and quite often get a bit better sense. So
that's great. Do you have anything else to add about the inspection?
I do have one. Yeah.
Yep.
So the inspector, they can't open walls. They can't move a bunch of stuff around. Just as an example. So I had one, we had the buyer client. and the sellers had strangely placed a 4x8 sheet of plywood that looks like there was really no reason why it should be there against an exterior wall on the foundation, and had some other stuff kind of piled around it. Well, the inspector can't do this the moment. I happened to actually just kind of pull it back, just kind of wondering, and looked, it was just leaning up against, and yeah, very much hiding a very costly. Engineers are going to have to be coming in, because I think this place is going to be sliding down the hill, crack in a foundation. And I say that in all seriousness, no exaggeration. Trying to hide something that you know about is going to get you into a load of hot water in a lawsuit as a seller, but also then as a buyer, just kind of being cognizant that we can't be moving stuff around. Not everything is done in a nefarious thing, because a lot of people just have a lot of boxes that they hide in the basement. But the inspection is not, it's a due diligence piece. It's not a diligence piece, it's a due diligence piece. They will go as far as they can within 4 hours and the boundaries that they live by, but it's not Superman. They can't see behind walls, and they just don't know necessarily some of the stuff that's in there, and you should be cognizant of it. And if you really want to inspect something, or if you really want to have something done, and you know that there's going to be an impediment to that, ask the seller to move it.
Yeah.
If it's a vacant house, ask them to turn the water and the gas on and everything for the period while they're there, and then they turn it back off again. Little things like that. You can't expect the home inspectors to be all knowing. They're not, but they will give a pretty good indication past what you and I would know.
Yeah, that's very good. That's a very good point. It's a very good point. So let's change subject, and that's your home city, Calgary.
That's true.
So new apartments and that's from CBC. New apartments and rental units hitting the Calgary market at the highest rate in over 30 years.
Mm-hmm.
That's 6 days ago. It's very fresh. So Calgary's rental vacancy rate for purpose-built units has climbed from 1.4% in 2023 to 4.8% in 2024. That's 3 times, right?
Yeah. According
to the latest report by CMHC. And I wanted to have your feeling, because you are there. I know we talked about this a few times, but with this new article, I want to see if it truly is a big difference now in the people renting. Do people rent easier rent, or cheaper rent because of this?
Yeah.
Or not?
Yeah.
That's the question.
Yeah. And I'd say both. I would definitely say both. The pricing has eased up and relaxed a little bit, because it was getting ridiculous, massive increases every time, the landlords possibly could. $600-$700 a month increases were like rampant. That's definitely cooled out a fair bit. And at one point, it was just darn near impossible to rent a place anywhere. Certainly nothing half decent, whereas that's really eased up quite a bit over the last little bit. Now, it does have me concerned, frankly, the number of purpose-built rentals that are being built. It's like everything happens after when it should happen, right? It's like, okay, we've got people coming into the city and into the province like mad fire.
Yeah, it's
everything
true.
is floating crazy. So we need to build more properties. Okay, well, these builds don't happen now. They happen 2 years down the road, and 2 years or a year down the road at minimum. And then a year down the road, we're in a totally different situation. And so it can really just, it really mucks things up for later down the road as well. And there's a lot of builders and a lot of developers and a lot of quasi builders that are getting into it that, are capitalizing on this sort of thing that, I don't know, we're going to be in. I think the conversation that we're having today versus the conversation that we had 3 months ago versus the conversation that we're going to be having 2 years from now are going to be radically different.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It sometimes it seems like we contradict ourselves, but it's just the facts, the elements.
Nothing but.
Exactly.
Yeah. Yeah. But everything's so reactionary, right? So they do one
Yeah.
thing to quell this, which has long-term effects and opportunistic um, ventures going in now that, once again, muck things up later on. Yeah. Planning is going to be tough over the next few years. It's going to be very
Yeah.
tough.
Yeah.
The one savings grace that we have that I think is going to be is we're looking at a little bit more of a moderate immigration policy, like
Yeah.
interprovincial and whatever. And here in Calgary and Alberta, we're going to be continuing that, but it won't be quite as frantic as it was before. So I think that'll be a bit of a savings grace. We're still going like this, sorry, but not nearly to the degree that it was before.
Yeah. Yeah. Very well said. Very well said. Again with the CBC. So a couple of days ago, we got the news that Canada's inflation rate edges down to 1.9. But core inflation measure still well above Bank of Canada 2% rate. Okay. And I want to go into details before asking you the question. So inflation largely came down across the board, like we said, right? 1.9 instead of 2. The price of groceries slowed 2.6%. Okay. So they're still going up. Not 1.9, it's 2.6, but they slowed. Okay. I like the way they put it,
Yeah.
compared to the same time a year ago. So it's only 2.6% expensive, higher than the last year. But those costs are still high, obviously, haven't risen 19.2% since November 2021. Okay, so this 20%, it's more like what people are feeling, right?
Yeah.
Because I go to the grocery store and it's not true it's 2-3%. It's literally 5, 10, 15, 20% on everything. And we're not talking about the Omaha steaks. Okay, which it probably doubled or something like that.
Yeah.
And I'll finish with this. On the housing front, shelter prices grew at a slower pace again, 4.6 year over year. So they only grew by 5%. Okay, don't worry, it's only 5%. And mortgage interest costs slowed for the 15th consecutive month, but rental prices grew at a faster yearly rate in November, 7.7% compared with October. Okay? And gas prices also fell in November. So that I felt the gas prices, I felt a little bit. But this is the most important. Not the most important, but a lot of importance should be awarded to this subject, the rental prices, because a lot of people rent. So the rental prices grew at a faster yearly in November than in October. Okay, that's that's the problem that I see here. Okay, so the rental prices grew faster, 7.7 instead of 7.3, even though they core inflation dropped at 1.9. Okay, and my question is very simple. The inflation that is important, it's in the housing market. So the housing market, if the inflation goes up, we all feel it, and it's the worst, right? This in groceries. Yeah. We saw the increase in rent, like you said, sometimes 600-700. Now we see we put numbers on it, like 7.7%. Okay, so we understand there's increase in rent. Now, next year, a lot of people will renew their mortgages.
Yeah,
rents go up. People renew their mortgages. Some of them, unfortunately, will not be able to continue to own a home and will go back to the rental market, which is 7.7% increase in the month of November. maybe only 5% next year, maybe 6%. We don't know. Rents are going up. People will come back into the rental market if, unfortunately, they cannot keep their homes. You understand? That's another contradiction. Housing starts, affordability is up, and now we see the 7.7 rate, 7% inflation on rents, and people will have to renew their mortgages next year.
Yeah.
So you understand my points? That's the my question, simple question. What do you think about that? And again, another contradiction. What can we do with it?
And I don't think that is a simple contradiction.
No, I took time. Exactly. I took the time to explain it.
Yeah, right. Like there's so much going on there. I mean, our vacancy rates are much, much higher.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
We've talked about this. How many downtown condos have been sitting vacant for sale? Months, completely vacant for months. In the middle of a housing crisis, in the middle of increases happening. People not being able to afford their mortgage, so they've got to go into a rental. I think one of the things to consider that as well then is on those rentals, assuming that it's the same place.
Yeah.
And assuming you're looking at a 1,400 square foot home over to a 1,400 square foot home, the person that owns that rental home that is renting out to the person largely has a mortgage as well that is being affected by these interest rates, and they've got to be turning a profit or at least a break even at the end of the day in order to get this, not just completely.
You nailed it. That's exactly my point. That's what you explaining it. That's the dilemma.
So many factors. And at the end of the day, it kind of all boils down to what does it cost to own a property, and what does it cost to pay your utilities, and what does it cost to just have your living expenses every day. And some things are hit harder than others. Like the price of a steak, definitely way higher than the price of pork. You know what I mean? Like certain things have gone up massively over certain other things, and people they're doing what they've got to do to adapt. But the next 2 years are going to be interesting with all of that, and how that affects everything with these renewing mortgage rates from really crazy low rates where they locked in for 5 years to coming up to what the heck are we going to do?
Yeah. Because right now it's what? 389, 399 the best? Fixed?
Yeah, I'm not even too sure.
It's around that probably.
It's somewhere in that ballpark. Yeah.
That's pretty high, because I know people that bought between 1.2 and 1.8 fixed.
Well,
and some of them less for like fixed 3 years. Some of them got like 1.15, I remember, in 2021.
Well, and let's call the reality of that though. These are not crazy high rates.
No,
they feel crazy high, but those were crazy low rates.
It's true. I bought my first home, not triplex, not condo, but there was the same. It was even higher. My first home, I qualified for a residential mortgage at 6.78 in 2001.
Yeah.
Okay.
The old
from Laurentian Bank. And that was when I was seeing like after that 399 rates fixed 5 years, I was like, man, that's a good deal.
Yeah. At one point it used to be if you can lock in for under 8%, you should do it. But largely a big part of the problem that we're in today as well is because those low rates were there for so long. So they stimulate everything to beat the Jesus until the inflation grows so high, right? Once again, going too hard, too reactionary on stuff, even the ones that are really appealing at the time, we tend to pay the price for it in the long run.
Yeah, it's true. It's so true, Chris.
Yeah.
Well, very good conversations, man. Very good conversation. Let's finish with a. I see this story a few weeks ago. Why I chose this? Because in Quebec, there's a lot of people that have what we call the creative promotions. Like I'll give you an example. Like I'll sell your home in 30 days, or I'll pay you $3,000. and sellers are calling, okay, that's good. If you don't sell my home, I'll have 3,000. They say yes. And when you get like certain conditions apply, the asterisks.
Yeah.
And when they get at the table face to face, they will explain that those $3,000 will be deducted from the seller side of the brokers, the seller's broker side.
Reduced fees when
the broker sells it. So it's like, it's like they should say $3,000. I'll reduce my commission $3,000 if I don't sell it in 30 days. That's what it's supposed to say, okay? But they say it in a way that attract customers, okay?
Mm-hmm.
And my point is that a lot of people don't like that, okay?
Yeah.
Don't like, being insulted a little bit. And I didn't know exactly what to think about this. I don't want to hit on this broker, just because I saw it. And I want to talk about, bring it into a podcast, see what people think, tell us in the chat. But I believe this is a little bit pushing it, playing on people's emotion, and especially if someone sees that and they got a bad year or something and they lost their home. I don't know if this will bring them good feelings about the brokers, realtors in Canada. I'm just going to finish this. So basically, a realtor in Vancouver put himself on a downtown billboard to raise his profile, appears to have gotten a little too much attention. Jan Watt's controversial ad was unleashed a torrent of criticism, and says he has received threatening messages. That's too much, but still, he got a billboard here in which it says, making Yaletown unaffordable since 2005.
Yeah.
What do you think, Chris, about this kind of advertising?
I think it's incredibly tone deaf.
Yeah.
Just because you can do something or say something doesn't mean you should. And this whole there's no negative press, that whole PR thing they go around for years. Yeah, that's bullshit.
Yeah. Donald Trump style.
Yeah. Yeah. He does it a little bit differently, but it's be a little bit more humble and a little less tongue-in-cheek smart-ass. Tongue-in-cheek smart-ass will get you in trouble in this industry, particularly more times than I can count. A very, very good friend of mine put a very tongue-in-cheek thing. It was actually going against realtors. It wasn't against the public, but he paid a massive price for it, and it created a lot of dissension in the ranks. It was tongue-in-cheek. I didn't think it was all that bad, but it was, because it had such a negative effect. Another realtor in our office years ago, no longer in our office, but it put out a ad in the paper on Remembrance Day. Remember when prices were this low? The vets did not appreciate belittling. So you really put it out there, put it on paper, get creative as heck like this. I think that's a great project that you did for coming up with some creative marketing, and then run it by somebody before you actually put it out, because I don't.
That's a good point. Run it by someone.
Yeah. And maybe even just a slight rewording on it might have been less hurtful. But there's an opportunity for a lot of people to say a lot of stupid things right now.
It's true.
Doesn't mean we should. Just a lot of homes.
Yeah. And you did you what's your most marketing technique, the most that brought you the most clients, or good attention, bad attention, whatever?
We've always just gone by providing really quick, easy access to listings. That has always been our, at the end of the day, give people what they want, which is convenience and easy access. But probably the most well-known and somewhat controversial one throughout our industry and through our city through the years has been the guaranteed sale program. Very similar to what you were saying with the 3,000. Hated by the vast majority of realtors out there who say it's completely fake advertising. Nobody's done anything. I think it's actually a really good program. It's just not typically put out in the light of what it should be. This is a very good program for a very few select people. but not for the vast majority, where it's kind of proposed to be for the vast majority. We're not going to sell your home or buy it.
Yeah.
If your
Yeah.
home doesn't sell
Yes.
within a certain period of time,
Yeah.
we'll pick it up from you at a wholesale price.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Well,
Something you would not want to
minus 6% of commission
or more.
or
Yeah.
more.
Oh,
Exactly.
yeah.
Because
Sorry. And then,
in Quebec, I know a guy that does it's 8.
yeah.
So
Yeah.
let's say, for example, the house is 400. They find, like, when they sign, they find homes that can go for 340, 360, 370. And they say, listen, this is my price. I guarantee 370. But they
Right.
know the property home stage a little bit, they will sell for 400. So they get the 370 guaranteed minus 8%. It's like it gets like 345 instead of 400. So they make 55,000 as a flip.
Right.
It's not really a good program for sellers.
Yeah. Yeah. And there's a few other semantics in there, at least here in Alberta, what we can do, can't do, charging fees, charging commissions, can't charge a commission, but you can, fees are a little bit different. Yeah. All those different things. But, honestly, they're great programs. Like, they really are. For this tiny select couple of groups, in these very finite situations. And other than that, yeah, I mean, if they really were the spot where the realtors are claiming that they're completely bunk, there'd be some realtors that have done extremely well from them, because who wouldn't buy a house for 20% less than the fair market value of it? But anyway, for the consumer though, it's pretty unlikely that it's going to be something that you would want to enter into. It's a way for the realtor to get in front of the face.
Exactly. Yeah, that was great too. That's great, Chris. I got everything done, every point. Do you have anything else to add today?
I don't think so.
Perfect. So again, it was a pleasure, as always. And we would like to thank you for your listening and your support. And we will see each other next week. Ciao, everyone.
See you guys.